Doing, Mets fans, whoever you're a fan of? It's your boy Wardy, and we're back at it with the latest Metropolitan postgame segment as we see, yes, the Pittsburgh Pirates are taken down here in Game 2 of a 4-game set by our New York Metropolitans by a final score of 5-2. In today's show, we're going to break down and, of course, highlight all the key takeaways in this matchup, getting through everything, innings 1 through 9, as we always do here for the #1 postgame show and the #1 Mets platform, not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY here on YouTube. And of course, you guys can find us on Twitter as well, but we are exclusively live here on YouTube for this late night showing. And I appreciate everyone first chiming in live on a replay. Happy to have you all in here, folks. Spam those W's in the live chat. And for my replay viewers, as I know there's going to be a quick turnaround to tomorrow's game around 1:35 p.m. Eastern. So for all my late night viewers and my early morning viewers, I greatly appreciate each and every single one of you guys. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button on your way in. Really does mean a lot. Spam those W's in the chat and the comments down below. The Mets are now just a game below 500, trying to get back to that 500 plateau and work up from there. They lost 5 of their past 7 games that I discussed with SNY and New York Post's Dexter Henry in our latest edition of the New York Post SNY Sports Short segment. Make sure to check it out there in the New York Post Sports YouTube channel that was live earlier today on YouTube and available on Twitter on their social platforms. We broke down how the Mets, of course, have been, again, 2-5 in their past 7 games, have blown leads in 4 of those 5 losses, and the Mets today, thankfully, found themselves with a lead and ultimately a victory. They did what needed to be done on the offensive end, and we're going to look at why Luis Torrens is quickly becoming the best backup catcher in Major League Baseball. And then, of course, a highly anticipated, long-awaited debut return, Edwin Diaz, back from his 10-game suspension, would have quite the impact and would be the cherry on top for a Mets bullpen that was having a much-needed, a dire outing from each and every one of these relievers after David Pearson's day was done. This Mets bullpen has finally stepped up, and it's fitting that they step up their first day back with Edwin Diaz securing the save. That and more that we're going to break down with our amazing sponsors at Sorare MLB. Make sure to check them out. Links down below in the description as always. And BetUS. Of course, Sorare has you covered all your fantasy baseball needs, and BetUS has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Check them out, of course, down below. A little bit about them later in the showing, everybody. But again, thank you all so much, each and every one of you in here. Greatly appreciate that. How you doing, Rebecca, Oliver, Yeet, Dave, great member as always. Steve, great member. Charlie, great member. Oliver, great member. All you guys, AZ, great member. I see donations. Billy, thank you so much for them. Billy, we are going to address them here in just a second. Scott Greenwald, Kevin, again, everybody first chiming in live on a replay. Continue to let me know your thoughts, your initial takeaways here from this Metropolitan victory for the Mets to, again, get even in this 4-game set. They're looking to get a game up here against the Pirates tomorrow, in which it was originally going to be Jared Jones pitching, but because Jared Jones has a grade 2 strain, is not going to pitch for at least 2 weeks, not going to touch a baseball or anything like that, the Mets will not have to face the young flamethrower outside of Paul Skeens in this rotation. So before we get on to that big Christian Scott versus Mitch Keller matchup this Monday, the Mets may have a chance here against potentially lesser pitching in said matchup against the Pirates tomorrow, folks. But what they did today is the key thing that we're going to break down here. So let's let it rip with the official, as always, WardyNYM post-game jingle. Shout out, as always, to my guys, Jordan and Greg, with the official WardyNYM post-game jingle, baby. You love to see it. Appreciate everyone's patience today as well, folks. I usually go live right after the conclusion of each ball game. As you guys can see, I'm out of town at the moment. Had myself a nice day out of town, a little vacation day with me and my girl, and I really greatly appreciate the time. And it really felt nice to kind of just take a step away a little bit and be able to not immediately rush right after the conclusion of the ball game to go and cover during this little vacation of a weekend that I find myself having. We will still be covering the next 2 games here, of course, wrapping up this series, and I greatly appreciate everyone that's been taking the time to chime in live on a replay for each and every one of those. So thank you guys so much for chiming in right now. But let's get to some of these donations, folks. Then we're going to break down this ball game inning by inning. Of course, we are going to take a look at the key performances on the pitching end. Headline, not so much by David Pearson today that we have plenty to say about. Myself and my nightly pitching contributor, Isaac Groffman, that we're going to get into shortly. But mostly on this bullpen, what we saw from Buto, Garrett, Nunez, Diaz, of course, to really cap things off with the save. On the offensive end, we're going to get into everything that stood out. Headline, of course, by Mr. Luis Torrens. You might not see his numbers there because this is automated and it shows the batters that finished the ball games and not the guys who started said ball game. But we're going to get into Torrens, his heroics, and everything in between, folks. But before I do anything else, everybody, let me get to some of your amazing donations. And again, thank you all so much for them. As always, apologies for the, of course, intro running there. If I didn't do that at least once by accident, I'm doing something wrong here on the WardyNYM platform. Billy, let's start with the first donation you had here earlier in the showing, before the show even started, so thank you so much for that. Billy Dottie says, now that the bats have cooled off, the issues of pitching, especially bullpen, are magnified. Who would you trade to upgrade the arms on the back end? There are many guys out there on the back end, bullpen-wise, I would be in favor of for the Mets. And honestly, there are plenty that even come within the division and the Nationals and the Miami Marlins. There are arms as well with the White Sox. There's arms with the Rockies. There are arms all over the place I would be interested in. And instead of giving you a clear-cut answer right now, I will just tell you this. We're going to be unrolling our first, editions of top 5 trade target videos this week here on the channel, this upcoming week rather, in the coming days. So be on the lookout. We're going to talk about potential reliever targets from the Mets. And while they may be far from the truth because David Stearns is the type of GM to land arms that you probably didn't have on your radar because they're not big names or more no names, but they will have effective quality outings for you in the David Stearns way. Regardless, we're going to talk about some guys that could make sense for the Mets and why. We're going to do that plenty this upcoming week, so be on the lookout for that, Billy. His second donation, however, is the following. Alonso is just not that franchise player to deliver when it counts during high leverage situations. I debated so many Mets fans about this. Gotta trade. Well, I can tell you this much, unless the Mets truly free fall big time here in the month of July, which of course can happen, but is not something we wish nor expect to see happen, Pete Alonso isn't going anywhere. So again, if you do not want to see Pete Alonso have a future with the Mets, that's all well and fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion there, but I assure you that decision is probably not going to be made until at earliest this offseason, with the Mets allowing him to walk in free agency versus trying to, say, reacquire on a long-term contract. The Mets definitely have interest in having Alonso return. However, I can tell you this right now, they are not strung up on this idea that's an end-all be-all with Pete Alonso being a longtime Met for the remainder of his career, the same way that they may feel about some other guys potentially currently in the organization. Again, not to say that they aren't going to lock Alonso up, but to suggest that his future with the Mets is a guaranteed thing beyond 2024 is, unfortunately, for a lot of Mets fans' case, including myself to a degree, a foolish notion. It is not reality, very much so up in the air come this offseason as things currently stand. Thank you for that donation, though. I appreciate that, Billy. AZ did have himself a donation earlier in here. Let's see, $10 holla. Mets W, put it in the books, baby. It hurts to say as a Mets fan, but Alonso needs to be traded to get a good return and hope Bridge doesn't get burned in hopes to resign him. I can tell you this right now. The Mets trade Pete Alonso at the deadline, that bridge is burned, because the Mets will more than likely be in a position where they will still be buying at the deadline, finding themselves right in the mix of that wild card race. So because of that reason, yeah, do not expect Pete Alonso to be traded unless the Mets truly get a king's ransom that we see of a return. Then again, if that in that scenario, then I understand it to a degree. And as much as I love Pete, every guy on this Mets roster right now, outside of 1, 2 top 3 players, is expendable. And Pete does find himself in that category. As much as I love him, I hope he retires a Met and, of course, is the leader in bombs for us for the next decade plus. However, if you're going to give an absolute bag of a return, that would be foolish to, turn down when you know that turnout is far greater than what Alonso can give you at absolute best by himself as a player, and value-wise, win-wise, then I understand the notion to go ahead and do exactly that. Yeet, how you doing? Let's see, everybody. Oh, good. Everybody first chiming in live. Thank you all so much for being here. Continue to smash a like and subscribe on, folks, as we're about to break down inning by inning how the Metropolitans took care of business tonight against the Pittsburgh Pirates by a final score of 5-2. Scott Greenwald with the $5 donation. Thank you so much, Scott. How are you? 2 questions. 1, did you agree pulling Peterson? You pull starters early, the pendulum implode. Garrett got lucky calls. What's wrong with Pete? Okay, so did I agree with Peterson being pulled? I don't like our starters not going deep. You know, that's something that'll always bother me. Did I hate the Peterson pull? No, I didn't hate it. Was I completely, in favor of the notion that he should stay in the game? No, but I understand both perspectives here. I think for the bullpen, it was huge to get the outing that we did. Obviously, he taxed it, but I think you have to look at more so Peterson being a problem, which is what warranted, of course, the pull. Of course, the pitch count at that point, even at 4.1 or so innings pitched, there's a reason why Mendoza did not feel comfortable keeping him in the ballgame longer. And that's a gamble not worth taking for a Mets team that, again, has quickly went from winning 8 of their past 10 games to dropping 5 of their past 7. You lose today. Of course, you then lose, 5 of your last 7, 6 of your last 8? Right? Okay, there we go. We're trying to do the math here, late night WardyNYM, as always. But the point I'm trying to make here is that in the case of this decision with Mendoza, I think it made sense. It just sucks because Peterson, again, was not able to provide length for this Mets team. And any guy that can't provide length for this Mets team in this rotation, which has been a commonality this season, I'm absolutely going to be fed up with, and I am today. So Peterson, he works some Houdini magic, working out a jam. So did Reed Garrett, all thanks to the schmuck of an umpire today. Again, he might have benefited the Mets in this one, which I will never scoff at or be mad at. However, it doesn't mean that's good for the game of baseball, and this ump was an absolute shit show in more ways than one. Pardon, of course, the words there, everybody. My apologies. But thank you so much for that donation, Scott and AZ. Appreciate that as well. And again, what's wrong with Pete? Pete just can't handle the pressure, in my opinion, of course, this being a walk year for him. And, again, for the past year plus now, since the shift, of course, has went and gone, entering the 2023 season, Pete Alonso just hasn't been the same player. And Alonso, while, of course, his peripherals are still pretty strong, high leverage situations, he's struggling mightily, swinging right through pitches that we know. He was horrendous in the bases loaded, no out situation that we saw today, just brutally striking out there. Cannot be doing that whatsoever. We're going to talk about that plenty here in a minute, everybody. So we'll get into more in Alonso and his struggles here in just a minute, folks. Thank you all so much for that. But final thing that I have to say, folks, before we get into breaking down this ball game inning by inning, let's take a quick word to hear from our amazing sponsor on the channel that many of you guys know very well, the best fantasy game out there. What our great friends at Sorare MLB.
It's heating up this July on Sorare MLB, where the thrill of the chase meets the prospect of big rewards. Lock in and go yard, collecting cards and playing your way to the top. Get things right and you'll be calling your shot at a share of over $225K in total cash prizes and more. Join for free. Build your winning roster, watch your players perform, and improve your strategy each week for a shot at being crowned a champion. Sign up and enter now. July is for baseball.
As always, everybody, shout out to our amazing friends at Sorare MLB. And as I'm about to show you guys how you can get involved today by clicking the link down below in the description to sign up again, play for free, draft your team, enter weekly tournaments for your chance to win amazing cash prizes. Of course, ticket prizes. We gave away a bunch of Mets tickets on the channel this season with our great friends at Sorare MLB, all just for simply signing up, playing for free, drafting your team, entering a tournament. It was that easy, that simple, folks. And we have a bunch of tournaments that we've entered, as you guys and gals can see here now. And right now, we have one that's doing better than many of the others, and that's because Will Smith of not the Will Smith, the OG Will Smith, not the one slapping anybody. We're talking about the Will Smith here of the LA Dodgers, 76 points. Brandon Nimmo with 13, Sevy with a measly 2 because he had a god-awful outing yesterday. And Jake Diekman did, of course, no favors. We have here as well Edwin Diaz back from the suspension. Huge 20 points there thanks to the save, and that's the other turnout there that we have from some of these rosters. So again, folks, get involved today because especially when you get involved with the July Chase, a big tournament that's been going on, the grand prize winner will win 15,000 big ones, folks. So again, if you want to get involved for MLB Fantasy in a very unique way where you are your own GM, where you are building your own roster, and for your chance to win great prizes in these tournaments, upgraded cards, cards to make your team better than what it currently is. Cards that you can actually buy, sell, and trade for real dollars on the marketplace with SoRare MLB with either your friends or anyone in the marketplace. All in all, make sure to check out our great friends at SoRare MLB. I'm really excited to see how I do in these tournaments. The past tournaments that we did, I did pretty solid. Got myself another strong starter to add into the mix of my rotation. And that Jake Diekman card that I have here, I just honestly need to throw out because it's just about as useless as him. My goodness, my God, my gracious. But let's hop back in this one and let's finally break down this ball game, everybody, shall we? Okay, this was my 12th ballpark, and this was by far my favorite one. Nice one, though. Cameron, I'm so glad he got to be there, my friend. And yes, PNC Park is easily one of the most gorgeous ballparks in Major League Baseball. Unfortunately for me, I only had the privilege of being there once so far in my own life. That was 3 years ago, right around 4th of July, and that is when Edwin Diaz gave up the grand slam to Jacob Stallings as a walk-off fashion. Stallings, who unfortunately ripped a home run with an expected batting average of .030. Yes, that is ridiculous. And yes, I did a day trip to Pittsburgh, so I didn't even get back home till like 3 a.m. My buddy Jonah and I, an absolute shit show. PNC Park has been cursed for the Mets and its fans, including myself, but not today, as the Metsies got a big win, of course, in a beautiful ballpark, overseeing all Pittsburgh, right on the water. They are connecting with the bridge. You have Heinz Field, which I'm always going to call Heinz Field, not that joke of a name that they currently call it. My Steelers fans, you know what's up, baby. How you doing? Here we go. And now here we go by breaking down this ball game, Cameron. Now, again, everybody, this was a fun matchup between these two teams today because we saw, of course, David Pearson versus fellow southpaw Bailey Falter. Bailey Falter has been staying in the state of Pennsylvania, but he won from Philly that we saw not all that long ago to now finding himself in Pittsburgh here with the Pirates. And this matchup, again, kicked off with the following, with Francisco Lindor doing what he does best this season, that is leading off with a hit. Lindor with the single that we see ripped there on ground ball to left field. Then we see Brandon Nimmo with the single himself. So already 2 on with no out. And Brandon Nimmo goes on to steal second base. So 2 in scoring position for the Mets here. Surely they're going to score early here against Falter. Farthest thing from the truth. The Mets actually falter in this opportunity to secure any runs, as unfortunately JD Martinez pops out. Alonso strikes out swinging disgustingly, and Mark Vientos does too. Bailey Falter works out of a 2 in scoring position jam with no outs there to kick off the beginning of this ball game. Frustrating start. JD Martinez, Pete Alonso clearly in little slumps if you haven't noticed, especially in both JD and again Alonso's case here. It's been sticking out big time on this road trip against both the Nationals and now the Pirates. In the bottom of the first, it was an easy 1-2-3 there for David Pearson, including 1 strikeout. On the top of the second, Luis Torrens again getting the start over Francisco Alvarez, in which Alvarez, of course, came off the bench and switched with Torrens later in this ball game. Alvarez, who took an absolute heater that we saw from, unfortunately, Paul Skeens of all people, straight to the elbow yesterday. Of course, swollen in that area, did not get the start, but did end the ball game there, catching for the Mets. Torrens, however, gets himself his first of 3 hits today, this being a single. However, Torrens would be caught stealing shortly after. Frustrating thing there for Luis Torrens, but he would make up for it later in the ball game. It was frustrating in the interim, however, because if Torrens was not caught there, he would have been driven in by his buddy Tyrone Taylor. Taylor rips his 10th double of the season, and that would have, again, scored the Mets' first run. Taylor, another runner in as many innings in scoring position for the Mets here, and they cannot score as Iglesias and Bader go down from there. Afterwards, we see, and again, unfortunately, we saw a comebacker drilled right there to Falter, but he would stay in the ball game, thankfully. And then we would see there, folks, Connor Joe would reach on a fielding error by David Pearson. Not long after, we would see a single by Palacio. Joey Bart would walk there. O'Neal Cruz would thankfully strike out, and Michael Taylor strikes out. We see David Pearson work out of a massive, again, bases loaded jam there with just right around 1 out. David Pearson working some Houdini magic, the same way that we've seen with a lot of Mets starters so far this season, where they're working early jams, but they're somehow inducing those ground balls for huge double play balls, or in the case again of David Pearson, just striking out everyone and their mother that we saw, especially in that specific inning there, to escape said jam. As we then head to the top of the third, everybody, Francisco Lindor now on base twice in not in as many innings. I'm an idiot because we're in the third already. Lindor on base for a second time today with a walk. Nimmo rips his second single of the day. Again, 2 for 2 now. Great day for Brandon Nimmo at the plate for sure. JD Martinez gets on with a walk. Bases loaded, no outs here for the Mets on the top of the third. Would they be able to execute? Pete Alonso, is he able to step up as Bailey Falter would exit this ball game again after again being hit, unfortunately, that we saw there due to injury. Again, really sucked to see that for Falter. Hopefully everything's right on his end. Dennis Santana, former Met, former New York Yankee earlier this season, dropped because he's been horrendous and is picked up now by the Pirates in this bullpen. We see him come in and strike out Pete Alonso. Bases loaded, no outs. Alonso strikes out for his second time today already with multiple runners in scoring position and less than 2 outs. Vientos, unfortunately, does the exact same thing, and it's up to Luis Torrens, the Mets' backup catcher, on a $100,000 contract. At least that's what the Mets are paying, where the rest is being paid there by the New York Yankees. And holy shit, has Luis Torrens been a godsend for this Mets team at the backstop position. If it's not Francisco Alvarez being brilliant for a couple weeks stretch, it is now Luis Torrens ripping his third double of the season. But this is a bases clearing double with 2 outs for Luis Torrens. Huge hit for Luis. Sign me up, baby. Let's get some Torrens hype in the chat right now and the comments down below, because Luis Torrens makes it 3-0 New York Metropolitans. We then head to the bottom of the third as outside of a Brian Reynolds single, because Reynolds has been murdering the Mets this series, David Pearson works out of that one. At the top of the fourth, Harrison Bader rips his 15th double of the season, but Harrison Bader, in a very Harrison Bader fashion, is caught trying to steal third base. Love you, Harrison. Love the aggressiveness, but it can definitely be swing and miss. The double was certainly not swing and miss. You barreled that bad boy nice, but when it came to, of course, being safe on the bags, not so much. Bader would be caught there, and the Mets don't do anything that inning. We would see then Nick Gonzalez hit a ground rule double, his 10th of the season there. Afterwards, we would see the Mets challenge this play, of course, on the tag play. The call on the field was overturned. David Pearson picks off Nick Gonzalez at the throw there to shortstop Francisco Lindor. Huge pick off there by David Pearson. Love that out. Huge, especially for Gonzalez to again lead off that inning with the double. Then we see there Joey Bart with his second walk of the day, I believe. And O'Neal Cruz, again, one of the most young, electrifying talents in all the National League, rips his 13th home run this season. A scorching liner to right that's in and out of PNC Park in the water in mere seconds. It is a 1-run ball game here. And David Pearson, again, giving up lefty crime. It's a 1-run ball game. Let's see what happens from here, folks. And again, another former Met, this time a guy that you might not remember too much, Ryder Ryan, former Mets prospect that they dealt all many years ago, gets the relief outing now for Dennis Santana. And afterwards, it's a 1-2-3 inning there that we see, unfortunately, for Ryder. In the bottom of the fifth, we see Brian Reynolds rip his second single of the day. That's all she wrote, though, thankfully. So again, good job by the Mets bullpen stepping up big time in this matchup. And we certainly needed it again with David Pearson faltering the way that we saw today, unfortunately. And we saw there Jose Buto comes in the bottom of the fifth then, and he gets the final couple outs. David Pearson's final line, again, folks, that we're going to get into shortly, but specifically it is as follows, everybody. 4.1 innings of 5 hit, 2 earned run ball, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. Everybody, let me know in the chat down below, and of course in the comments as well for my replay viewers, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate David Pearson's outing today and why? Thank you all so much in advance for doing so. Let's see. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything important here, everybody. Okay, I did not. Awesome. Okay, now let's get back into breaking down this ball game. Appreciate all my live viewers. I don't know where we're at in the like count, everybody, but if you guys could help us get to anywhere, 80 to 100 likes by the live show to my concurrent 200 plus live viewers, thank you so much again. That would greatly be appreciated. Help the algorithm in many ways. Again, thank you all so much in advance. Now let's hop back into this ball game. And again, folks, we now head to the top of the fifth inning as the bullpen does a great job. Jose Buto, we're going to get into Buto because he's been having great early success now as a reliever for the Mets, but he is not locating nearly as good as you might think he is. He has a lot more to do with his command of his pitches, and we're going to highlight that shortly. Mark Vientos, who did not have good at-bats his first couple today, both are runners in scoring position, both striking out behind Alonso and doing so. Not so fast, not this time. He rips his first hit of the day. Luis Torrens rips his second hit of the day. Mets have 2 on, no out here. Tyrone Taylor, unfortunately, pops out on a bunt attempt. Just horrendous. Anytime you're going to pop out on a bunt attempt, you are going to make my blood boil. And Tyrone, I love you, but I certainly hated you in that instance. But you know what I didn't hate? You know what I said? Oh my God, Jose Iglesias ripping his sixth double of the season for the Mets, driving in a run, making it a 4-2 Mets lead, adding some insurance. That is what we love to see. Oh my God, absolutely love to see it. Jose Iglesias continues to step up big time for the Mets as not only a guy that's looked fantastic with his hands there in that infield, but also the contact and gap-to-gap ability with the bat, in which we have once again to thank JD Martinez for helping change his swing path and get more slugging, more power that we have seen by also using, again, those pre-game weighted metal bats. It has helped guys like Iglesias quite a bit this season tap into more power than what we have seen maybe over the past couple years in his major league and minor league career. No less, it's a 4-2 ball game. That does it there for the top of the sixth. And the bottom of the sixth, Jose Buto works a beautiful 1-2-3 after walking Joshua Palacio. He gets Joey Bart on a huge double play ball to end said inning. As we head then to the seventh, nothing from the Mets, 1-2-3, bunch of useless. I shouldn't say 1-2-3 because Nemo did have that single part of me. Then we saw JD Martinez unfortunately strike out there. Again, JD, bad day at the plate again. And then Pete Alonso grinding into it, inning double play, because of course he does. As we then head to the bottom of the seventh, we see Reed Garrett come in, and this is where the ump really stole the show here. Big time for the Mets, and boy, did they need it. After striking out O'Neal Cruz, we see pinch hitter Rowdy Tellez replace Michael A. Taylor, and Tellez rips a single in this one. A throwing error, unfortunately, by Terenz on the pickoff attempt, which we don't love to see. McCutchen with a walk, Reynolds with a walk. It is bases loaded, one out here. And what does Reed Garrett do? He does some Houdini-ass shit, and he gets out of the jam as well. Pardon the French, folks, there. We see a line out there by Cabrian Hayes. Then, of course, we see pinch hitter Jack Sawinski come in to replace Connor Joe. And then we see Derek Shelton, of course, get ejected from this ball game. And then we see Jack Sawinski, of course, strike out there. That went in hand with the ejection that we saw. Huge outs that we see by Reed Garrett in this one to end that inning unscathed. Bases loaded, one out, no problem for Reed Garrett. And again, the umpires have been horrendous this season. They have hurt the Mets in many ways. Today, they did benefit the Mets quite a bit with that expanded strike zone. Again, I'm never going to complain when things go in Mets' favor. However, I will say it is still bad for the game of baseball. You need to be better, and that's why we're getting one step closer to robotic umpires. Heading into the top of the eighth, everybody. Mets don't do anything there. And, of course, there for the Pirates in the bottom of the eighth, we see Danilo Nunez come in then to replace Reed Garrett. Jed McNeil comes in the ballgame at this point to replace Mark Vientos there that we see at third base. And then he switches with Jose Iglesias there that we see Jose goes to third, Jeff goes to second base for the remainder of the ballgame. In the bottom of the eighth, it's a clean 1-2-3 inning of work, including a strikeout there for Danilo Nunez. And the ninth, we see another clean inning there for Nunez. He, of course, unfortunately hits O'Neal Cruz to kick off the inning. Pardon me, I don't know what the hell I'm saying here, folks. Edwin Diaz obviously comes in the ninth, and this was huge for Edwin to return after a clean inning of work by Danilo Nunez. And this is Diaz's, of course, first outing. Over the past 10 games, he has been suspended, and he does, unfortunately, again, hit O'Neal Cruz to kick off that inning, but is all looking strong with Edwin Diaz from there. Again, he was shaky early on with those first couple pitches, which led to the hit-by-pitch there of O'Neal Cruz, but then we saw the Edwin Diaz of old, the Edwin Diaz that doesn't need sticky stuff because he never cheated. I will never buy into that nonsense that he did. Just because you're suspended, just because you are punished by the league does not necessarily mean that you did something wrong. And I'm firmly under the impression that Edwin Diaz did nothing out of the ordinary with his normal routine. The last time he was out on the bump, he, of course, was cleared with his hands today and looked like the Edwin that we know, love, and covet. The arsenal was beautiful today. He strikes out Rowdy Tellez masterfully there and then gets a quick in on the hands, double play ball there to Andrew McCutchen to end the ball game. The Mets win this one again by a final score of 5-2, everybody. And I want to continue to see and hear your initial reactions to said win here in the live show. And thank you so much in advance for doing so. Let's see. Tired of your BS? Oh, what happened here? I don't know what happened between you guys, but again, if you guys can't stand a certain chatter in the chat, you guys, of course, can always block them so you don't see their comments or anything like that. I see that as happening in the chat, and that's okay. Wardy, you got the OMG going right now. There you go. We really do, baby, and we will gladly take that. Love to see the Mets here, especially Jose Iglesias, continues OMG magic. I understand the Mets have not been playing the best baseball since that concert. It needs to be better. We hope it's going to be better, but in the interim right now, we will gladly take this victory. And again, not the sexiest one for the Mets. We all know this. This is a victory that, again, they certainly had help on the pitching end, in part because of these umpires. But if there are any guys that deserve, in my opinion, to highlight as the key stars of the game, it is absolutely, when we take a look on the pitching end, not nearly as much on David Peterson, but so much on this collective bullpen. The Mets pen today as follows: gave the Mets a strong 4.2 scoreless innings, allowing just one singular hit and 3 walks over those 4 innings. Of course, the walks continues to be an issue for this Mets team. Garrett especially has fluctuated with his control a lot this year. However, to get the type of production the Mets got, Danilo Nunez continues to be that effing guy in this pen, and he's looking like a really quality guy to not only eat multiple innings, but potentially a guy that, again, can continue to be a setup artist for Mr. Edwin Diaz. And while we talked about yesterday, another great, of course, short pitch outing, all strikes, swinging strikeouts for Shintaro Fujinami in rehab yesterday, we also still need to talk about how, until we say call up a Shintaro Fujinami, until they say consider a Bryce Montes Dioka, and of course they did not mention already, the Mets did a nice call up today for a 2-time cancer survivor, Eric Orze. Orze, who has right around a 3.6, 3.7 ERA that we see thus far in AAA Syracuse as a reliever, gets the call today as Ty Addick was the corresponding move. He is DFA'd or option, one of the two, whichever it was with his current contract. I believe he was DFA'd. No less Adcock, who gave up, again, just a grand slam, was horrendous, and the Mets 14-2 loss yesterday. He's cut entering today. Eric Orze is coming in. And I'm going to talk a bit about Eric Orze here in a minute, as my man Isaac Rothman has a lot of awesome notes on Orze and quite a bit about his game, along with, of course, the awesome story of being a 2-time cancer survivor. But this Mets bullpen deserves the most credit today, and it's guys like Danilo Nunez in the interim that are really helping things. So yes, do I agree the Mets and David Stearns should be adding more of this bullpen? 1,000%. Are the Mets going to look to add arms that are going to be very outlandish in return because they're going to have to give up a lot of key assets? No, David Stearns is not going to go down that route to do said things. So do not get your heart strung on, key top name relievers as your key targets for the Mets by the deadline should they add bullpen help, and they certainly will do that. Look for, of course, arms that are going to be a little bit more no-name, but of course are going to be very effective. Maybe they will go after 1 or 2 sexy arms. However, it's going to come at a price, and that's something that we all know David Stearns, if he can avoid and still get the same quality from other lesser names, he's certainly going to do exactly that. And that's why a guy like Nunez and Garrett, again, Buto, all guys that heading into the season we did not initially expect to have nearly the impact in this bullpen the way they have. Even including Buto, again, a guy that we expected to be an everyday mainstay starter for the Mets. Not the case here, as again, the Mets right now get a quality outing from him when relief-wise, he still isn't looking as good as maybe what you're hoping to get from him, right? So let's talk a bit more on the pitching end here, folks, and then I want to see whatever you guys got to say here in the chat about this 5-2 victory. Thank you all so much again in advance, everybody. Let's see, 6 NL teams between 2.5 and 4.5 games out of the wild card logjam. Oh, absolutely. Again, the Mets have been within a half game and a game. Every time they get close, they've taken a game or 2 step back, but hopefully they can continue to roll and go from there, everybody. But let's talk a bit on the pitching end, because then I want to talk also on Eric Orze and what that call means for the Mets and this bullpen configuration for the time being right now, folks. But as we take a look at, again, this showing for the Mets and Mr. David Peterson, let's start there. Then I will gladly pivot from there to talk a bit more on the remainder of this bullpen and what stood out today. All right, everybody. It is as follows that we see here. David Peterson was 4.1 innings, 4.1 innings of 5 hit, 2 run, 2 earned run, 2 walks, 5 strikeout ball on 87 pitches, and a 3.58 ERA. David Peterson today, again, the arsenal was as follows, everybody. The sinker was a total of 31% at 92.8. It topped out around 95. Four-seam was 26% at 94, topping out at 96. Slider was at 19%, sitting right around at 85. Also, everybody, remind me, I will give you guys a quick prospect report before we wrap up the show. We'll highlight any key outings that we saw on the prospect end in both single A, double A, and triple A, as we usually usually do before we wrap up our usual post-game segments. Looking forward to that. Changeup, 17% of the arsenal at 85, and then there we see 3% of the arsenal curveball at around 80 miles per hour. The swing and miss stuff was again there today for David Pearson, who had a strong 14 whiffs. However, just did not have the depth, the length that we saw or were hoping for in this rotation. His sinker and changeup especially were working well today. He also had 5 whiffs that we saw on that sinker alone, and the velo was up on it. The changeup did have no whiffs on it, but he did generate 6 swings against it and kept in the zone well with a 60% zone percentage. He still doesn't look completely confident in his slider yet that we noticed with Pearson, as he can't quite land it against right-handed hitters. He did have a 40% whiff rate on it today, however, and his whiff percentage, I should say, and his four-seam fastball did look strong, something to make note of, getting more 4 whiffs on it. He was able to keep it up in the zone, and it touched 96 multiple times that we saw on the gun. And again, topped out right around 94.5 to 96 miles per hour, 95.5, I should say. And despite having great stuff David Pearson had today, he again struggled to get out of his own way with these high pitch counts, again, only having himself go to 4.1 innings. So an overall grade, my man Isaac Groffman, that you could check him out on Twitter at ISAACGROFFMAN, of course, for all your Mets pitching threads needs. He gave him a 5 out of 10 here on the rating, and I absolutely agree with him. I actually am going to go with 4.5 out of 10, because to not even get more than 4.1 innings out of David Pearson is rough, and just, again, not what you're looking for from your starter. Even if David Pearson doesn't profile as a true starter that's going to give you more than a 5 and dive of an outing, this Mets team desperately needs length from their rotation, so the more that they continue to not get it, the more this bullpen continues to be taxed, the more someone like me as a fan is going to have a problem with it. So David Pearson, again, a fine outing on the swing and miss. Don't hate that whatsoever, but a lack of length is why I'm not even going to go 5 out of 10 on my rating. And again, wherever you guys had him on 1 out of 10 on your scales, continue to let me know. Thank you all so much. And talking about Jose Butto again here, everybody, this is the interesting stuff about Butto, as kind of less than ideal start as a reliever when it comes to the actual command and control of said pitches. Again, he's getting outs, but how is he getting these outs? Let's break it down. Butto has not looked as good as his results may have been showing you. He's still having very much an issue with locating his four-seam fastball, and his sinker has gotten pretty lucky on batted balls. You know, he also needs to throw his changeup quite a bit more. The slider is a pitch he has been working on for a while, and it did look good today, so that's something to build off of. But for Butto, of course, it is making sure he's looking strong with the command. And today we saw from Jose Butto as follows. Again, 1.2 innings, only having 1 walk. So again, that's noted as well. Butto has struggled with the walk rate that we have seen fluctuate from both the AAA and, of course, now MLB caliber level. So let's see how Butto looks in his next continued outings there as a multi-inning reliever there for the Mets, in which they need as many innings eaters as humanly possible. Mr. Delightful, happy to have you in here. Diaz makes this bullpen hold, of course, absolutely. And speaking of Edwin Diaz, I do just want to share a bit there, because Reed Garrett, again, did not look great today overall, but of course got out of his own jam thanks to the ump helping him plenty. And Edwin Diaz certainly stood out to me today, and I want to do a little bit more of a deep dive on him in particular before we talk about Eric Orze. Daniil Nunez, you know, there's a lot of the same to say about Nunez and his effectiveness with his four-seam fastball and the slider. Again, he's very much in the initial echelon that we have seen with Edwin Diaz in the case of velocity here. I mean, Daniil Nunez is, again, minimum on the fastball that we saw today, 97, topping out 99, sitting 98. The velo was up 1.5 miles per hour today on the heater. It was up over 1 mile per hour in the slider today, sitting right around 88.5 miles per hour. He looked great, had a 33% whiff rate on both those pitches. And Edwin Diaz today, again, funny enough, sat exactly the same as Daniil Nunez on the fastball, both exactly 97.6, so we round out to 98 miles per hour there. And Edwin, you know, was actually almost a half tick up on the average velocity this year, as he topped out right around 99 miles per hour today, rounding it from 98.6. And Diaz, of course, we did see touch right around 100 in his previous outing before, of course, being suspended for those 10 games. Looked very strong there, of course, had the 100% whiff rate on the slider today, 50% on the four-seam fastball. Daniil Nunez and both Edwin Diaz were very sharp, dazzling, if you will, especially in Diaz's case. Outside of that hit by pitch to Oneil Cruz, looked like the Edwin Diaz of old that we can depend on and rely on as our $100 million man of a closer, getting a big save in game 2 of a 4-game set here against the Pittsburgh Pirates. But now let's talk a bit about Eric Orze. Again, as I mentioned, the Mets did his call-up earlier today, and I've been telling you guys for at least the past week now, Eric Orze is a name that you guys can actually expect and should not be shocked if and when Eric Orze is called up, everybody. And I do want to actually share one more thing with you all before we talk about Eric Orze, if in case I didn't have it already, and then we will, of course, do the prospect report and wrap up the show. But as we hop back into SoRare MLB in our slide for a second, let me minimize that, folks. As you guys and gals can see here, I was on, again, New York Post Sports Today segment with my man Dexter Henry. Make sure to check it out in case you guys and gals haven't already. Thank you all so much in advance for doing so. It's not showing the video for whatever reason through here. It might be an issue on my end, but no less. Again, check out that segment again, of course, on their YouTube channel, if not their socials. But as we take a look now, folks, let's hop back down into me talking about Eric Orze earlier today. Because again, this was the initial news here that we saw in Eric Orze, and I want to see what my man Isaac Rothman in particular had to say about Eric Orze, because again, Orze has definitely been an intriguing option for the bullpen out of AAA for quite some time now. However, has also been one of these guys where, you know, he has gotten in his own way a little bit. Of course, health issues, stuff that he can't control, has been a problem, and that has been beyond unfortunate. He's overcome those battles, but normal pitching injuries he has sustained that we have seen in recent years. And this is what my man Isaac has to say about Eric Orze here. You know, Orze is one of the most intriguing arms in the Mets organization, in Isaac's humble opinion. He can go multiple innings of relief, great fastball characteristics, a 60-grade splitter, and a hard, tight slider. He's a great story, so it's nice to see him get a chance. And shout out to TJ Stats, of course, that provide this information. And again, this helps give you guys a gauge as to the stuff plus on his pitches as well. He has around a 120 stuff plus also on his four seam, which is very, very impressive that we see there for Eric Orze. So all in all, Orze is one of these guys where he doesn't necessarily have the flashiest things that we've seen thus far at the AAA level this season. However, he does have a lively arm, and he's a guy that really hasn't been given a chance yet by this Mets bullpen. And David Stearns hasn't, you know, done great with every single internal call-up this year. He hasn't had continued success with guys beyond really the likes of that we've seen Daniel Nunez, Reed Garrett, Danny Young to a degree, but Young has kind of fallen off quite a bit. Other guys just haven't worked well. I mean, the fact that we even called up Ty Adcock and Matt Festa and Tyler J, it's kind of inexcusable with just how piss poor they were from the time out there. Eric Orze may have his struggles from the beginning, but he's definitely worth a flyer for a Mets bullpen that will take as many opportunities and as many arms as they can possibly find themselves getting. So we will see how Eric Orze does, but I'm definitely curious to see what you Mets fans have to say about Eric Orze getting the call up here for the Metsies in this one. Can you imagine if Eric Orze turns out to be another Randy Mars? That would be crazy. It really would be. Let's see. He's single-handedly responsible for that cringe concert. If you're talking about Jose, then okay. Of course. Let's see here. Fire Mendoza, and he can take McNeil with him. Mendoza isn't going anywhere, so you can keep crying about that all year, Priest. McNeil, however, is a vastly different discussion that we all know quite well, folks. All right, everybody. Oh, I just realized something that I want to make sure is fine. Give me 1 second, folks. I have a water with ice at the moment, and the condensation is almost getting to my laptop, so I'm going to scooch a little bit here. And now, folks, before we get on to wrapping up the live show, let's get into breaking down the latest on the prospect end. What's been happening with the Metsies? Has been anything standing out for them on the prospect end, both, of course, looking at AA, AAA, and, of course, Single A. We highlighted Brandon Sproat's brilliance with another masterful outing a couple days ago that we discussed in yesterday's post-game rant segment as one of the lone positives in the show. As Brandon Sproat, again, won around 6.2 innings, a 2-earned run, around between 9 and 11 strikeout ball. One of those three numbers, I'm just blanking on which one. Brandon Sproat looked absolutely beautiful. Ryan Clifford had a big 4-hit game and had another hit yesterday, I believe, an RBI. So let's start actually in Single A this time, and let's work ourselves up here. Let's look at the Port St. Lucie Mets and see what they did, and really, has anything stood out for them on the prospect end as they lost today 5-2 after losing. I believe they lost again yesterday too. So back-to-back losses at least here. And what we have seen, finally, I've been looking for this man to provide some production for quite a bit. Marco Vargas, of course, prospect that the Mets acquired last year in the Miami Marlins David Robertson trade. who has not been looking great this year in the pros that we've seen. Portialucci had a nice day today at shortstop, 2 for 2, 235 average, 645 OPS this season. Outside that, we have seen Colin Houck, a former top draft pick by the Mets a year or so ago, 1 for 4, 2 of 5, 622, not looking great. And Willie Fanas, 0 for 3, again, a top international signing a couple years ago. I'm not loving too much there. And on the pitching end, yep, not all that stands out either. So now let's take a jump to the Cyclones today, and let's see what the Brooklyn Cyclones did. They did anything notable here in their matchup, and they did unfortunately lose 5-4 in their matchup as well. So the first two minor league teams that we check up have unfortunately lost today for the Metsies. On the prospect end, Nick Morabito with a 284 average and a 733 OPS in the outfield, went 1 for 5 with a run scored today. That's pretty much all she wrote, though, on the offensive end. Nothing really notable else there. So now let's head to the Rumble Ponies, and let's see what the Rumble Ponies had to do on the offensive and pitching end today. Were they able to secure a victory, or did they falter just like their other two minor league teams? No, they did not. They won today against Hartford by a final score of 5-0. And on the offensive end, who stood out today? It was once again Ryan Clifford with now a 224 average and an 886 OPS. Cough, cough, Kyle Schwarber, 2 for 3 with a run scored today. Jeremiah Jackson, 1 for 5 with an RBI. And there we go. Again, another big day for Matt Rudick, who a lot of Mets fans would love to see given an opportunity at some point. The 26-year-old outfielder went 2 for 4 today with 2 runs scored, and that was thanks to, we saw there, again, great hitting there by Rudick. And on the pitching end, we saw Trey McLaughlin with another sharp relief outing. He had himself a scoreless outing, 2.59 ERA there in relief this season. That looked great. Marino there had 6 scoreless innings of 6 hit, 0 earned run ball, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts with a 4.09 ERA of the season. Now let's head into the Syracuse Mets and see what they had in store. Do they have a victory like that we saw with the Mets and the Rumble Ponies, or would they falter? They would unfortunately falter with a no-show of an offense doing their best Mets impression the past couple games. They lose this one outright 4-0 to the Red Sox. And in said matchup, we see Luis Angel Acuna go 1 for 4 with a pair of strikeouts, 263 average, 682 OPS, commanding shortstop. Acuna did play center field a day or so ago, something to bear in mind as he's continuing to get positional diversity. We saw Rylan Bannon 1 for 4 in said matchup, and Cortez with a single. Beatty 0 for 4, 294 average, 899 OPS. Nothing else really notable there. Mike Vassell had 6 innings of 3 earned run, 4 hit, 2 walk, 8 strikeout ball, ERA at 6.18 this season. Bryce Montes de Oca had himself 1 inning in which he allowed 1 walk, 1 hit, 1 earned run, 2 strikeouts. Montes de Oca continuing to work his way back, hopefully, into this Mets bullpen as a flamethrower, along with another man that hopefully will be back sooner than later in Shintaro Fujinami. And speaking of Japanese players that will hopefully be back sooner than later, let's go from one arm to another, this time in Kodai Senga, as I discussed Kodai Senga today, that you guys saw, of course, in my segment with Dexter Henry, that you guys can check out if you haven't already on the New York Post sports segment there. I did highlight how Kodai Senga, who will be having a rehab outing in AAA Syracuse this week, looked absolutely masterful with 2.2 scoreless innings for his first relief outing, not relief, but rehab outing rather, that we saw with the Brooklyn Cyclones a couple days ago. Very excited to see Kodai's second turn out there. I'm really curious to see for Senga's case how effective he looks, how deep does he go on the pitch count this time, and ultimately another start closer to returning to this Mets rotation that we will find, again, sooner rather than later. Kodai Senga and his patented Ghost Fork, probably more than likely post All-Star break, back and making an impact as the ace of this rotation, along with guys like Christian Scott, of course, and then we're going to see who the Mets decide to part with and who they keep on the trade deadline front, because Severino, Quintana, Minaya, everyone and their mother on the pitching end, not named Christian Scott and Kodai Senga, are pretty much expendable for the Mets, even with them looking to both buy and sell by the deadline, pushing for a wild card spot, everybody. Again, I want to thank you all so much for watching live on a replay, folks, but that is going to wrap up tonight's show. We will be back live tomorrow after the conclusion of hopefully a Game 3 matchup. Let's see how they do then, folks. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. Sad Mr. Met, yes, you did miss the post-game jingle. We played it earlier in the show. Make sure to check it out. But thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you again soon. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby.